Welcome to another episode of Holistic Health Habits, where we explore practical strategies for maintaining a balanced and healthy lifestyle. I'm your host, Surani Fernando, and today we have a very special guest, Nithya Karia, the founder and CEO of Nithya Karia Wellness. Nithya is a renowned holistic health expert. She's an integrative nutrition coach with a gut health specialization, and she also has a specialization in foundations of positive psychology. And with this unique and complementary background, she's able to help individuals manage stress by fostering low-stress habits and gives her clients practical strategies to balance life's demands without sacrificing joy or health. Welcome to the show, Nithya.
Thanks, Surani.
So first of all, you have a really interesting background. Can you share a little bit about your story and your own evolution in the holistic health world, combining gut health principles with broader psychological well-being to help with stress management?
Yeah, absolutely. Really, I think all of our journeys kind of begin from a very personal space. I think it's really what drives us and what excites us about, especially I think when it comes to health. And so, I grew up actually in a family of physicians, really steeped in Western medicine, but also Eastern culture. And so I kind of had a unique upbringing. And for me, it was really important that, I had kind of a lot of symptoms and things that happened in my body, even when I was pretty young. And I just never felt compelled to find the answer through a pill or through, medication or something that was really just symptom related, really.
Yeah.
And it started from a really young age. And just as I got older and things kind of progressed, I lived what I thought was, a healthy lifestyle. But for me, the primary focus was really around, goal attainment. It's like, how do I show up as a driven individual? And that was my primary focus. And what I started to see the older I got was that, how I was showing up was altering how I felt. And how I felt was also really important to me. It's just for the longest time, it kind of took that back seat. And so there came a point in my life when, it was kind of a bottom for me. Something happened in our family. My husband was hit by a car biking on his way to work.
Wow.
And thankfully, he's made a full recovery. But at that point was really just this, this waking up for me of realizing that, I was really trying to go in two directions at the same time. And I really wanted to find in the end, when I came out of all of this, there's got to be a way for me to feel like I can achieve what I want in my life and simultaneously feel good along the way. Like, stop putting it off for tomorrow, for one day, for when the kids are older, for when I retire. All of the things that I'd also just heard from colleagues, friends, and witnessed, growing up and just continue to see in my mentors and people that I interacted with. So I went back and focused on holistic health originally, and then just started to supplement all of that with the gut health. To me, that gut-brain connection is a really powerful reminder of, that the mind and body are one. And it's not even on a spiritual level, but really on a very, very practical scientific level.
Yeah.
That we're connected, and information actually goes both ways. I think a lot of us think of the brain as just this awesome place where everything is kind of originating, and that it can, it's sort of like the be all end all. But the truth is like so much of the incoming information actually comes from our body. And so I, incorporated that into my work and really eventually kind of distilled all of this information down into 5 habits, which is what I teach, high vibe habits. And it really talks about the root of the problem, because what I experienced, what I saw a lot of, my peers and people in my life experiencing, is that when you go after, the thing that you want to bring into your life, whether that is health, that's peace, it's fulfillment, all of the things that we search for really fall under this one umbrella of just, we do it because we want to feel good, right? I want to have a nice home because it makes me feel good. I want to have a loving marriage because it makes me feel good. I want to, whether it's the work, whether it's personal or professional, right? That is the end goal.
Yeah.
And the trouble with just adding something to your list, like, oh, okay, let me just learn how to eat well, let me just, exercise more and take care of my body, is that it doesn't change. Just because we add it to the list, it doesn't change our sort of mental capacity to prioritize. And so if I still have built a life around putting everything else first, saying that my work is more important than I am, or somebody else is more important than I am, right? Then even if I want it really badly for me, it's really hard to make that consistent change, like for it to actually become a part of my lifestyle if I don't learn to kind of, reprioritize and reevaluate how I am actually prioritizing the things in my life.
Yeah. And you mentioned, your 5-habit framework, you being the cornerstone of your practice. Can you walk us through these habits and explain how they integrate into your clients' daily lives?
Yeah, absolutely. So the 5 habits are clarity, control, confidence, curiosity, and creativity. And it's really a healthy habit for all of the places we can kind of find ourselves in our minds, like with our emotional well-being, which is the past, the present, and the future. Mm-hmm. And clarity is really this constant alignment that begins with just the simplest first question is just, how am I feeling right now? So it's not just what I'm doing in life, right? But how I'm showing up is changing, how the choices that I'm making, how I treat someone, what I decide to go after, right? Do I ask for that promotion at work? Do I go out on a limb and start my own business? Like all of the things in our life that all the possibility that we see for ourselves actually begins with how we feel, because it changes what we see as possible.
Yeah.
So that's that first habit of just, maintaining clarity with how we're feeling and what we want in our lives. The second habit is control. So not just identifying it. I've had clients that really get stuck in this phase. They have the awareness. It's this guy, I feel like crap. But then they feel really upset about it and disempowered. But the next habit is actually understanding that we always have choice. And so finding that next step, that piece that's doable for us, right? That first lowest kind of stretch goal so that we start to create consistent change in our life. The third is confidence. And this is, acknowledging so often it's really easy for us to see ourselves as the problem. Gosh, I made that poor choice eating. I didn't work out. I didn't, whatever it is. We see ourselves as the problem. So spending as much time as we spend kind of dwelling and stewing in what is not going well in our life is also harvesting what is going well. How are we contributing positively to our life, to other people's lives? And witnessing that and accepting that as part of the experience. The fourth one is curiosity, which is really a healthy reflection tool. Instead of distracting habits like judgment and comparison, which really find a way to, kind of conveniently have us measuring lower, usually than the people that we see around us, it's really a healthier way to say, what's actually happening right now and creating a more objective space for us to reflect in. So kind of taking the emotion out and realizing that emotions are just information. So I get to take that, do something with it, and really see what could I actually be doing differently that would move the needle. And creativity is the application of that, like taking that to the next step and saying, if I look around me, instead of comparing, I can look around and really feel inspired. I can say, oh gosh, Surani's doing, this tonight. That sounds really fun and exciting. Someone else is vacationing. Someone else is eating this way. It's just really looking around us to say that what works for my life is really going to be a unique fit.
Yeah.
So I can look around because there is just, this overwhelming amount of information out there of what's kind of good for us. This is our opportunity to really experiment and say, let me try this and see what actually works for me.
Yeah. Super interesting. And can you provide maybe some examples of how your clients have transformed their lives using your 5-habit framework? Maybe there might be one particular success story that you like to talk about that you can share with us.
Yeah. So I had a client, and she found that she was very, very, very comfortable and confident in her career and in her work. Mm-hmm. But there were many things in her personal life where she really just felt like, much more disempowered around. This is the relationship I have with my kids. Her kids were older and out of the house, but still something that kind of, that she wanted to see improve, would like to have a difference in, even in her personal relationships, and just found herself always kind of making decisions from a place of low expectation. And, she was able to, when we walked through these habits, like really leave behind, again, a lot of the stress that comes from just the fear of, am I doing enough? Am I showing up enough? All the what ifs I think that we can project into how we're showing up, how we're, into our relationships, and really started to realize that there was so much more that she could offer herself around creating boundaries for herself, around, just receiving more from the life, like just taking stock and realizing that, wait a second, I've actually accomplished every single thing that I have set out to do in my life. And there are a few things, right, that still need working on. But instead of feeling like, oh, it's just a matter of time before something kind of goes wrong, she was really able to, to take charge and really feel like, have a more accurate representation when she saw her life.
Right. Okay. And are you noticing that you have a particular group of clients that come to you? Is it an age group, or is it a gender, or what would, be, obviously, I mean, I assume you would be opening up your services to, the broad range of whoever wants it, but are you noticing some trends there?
Yeah, absolutely. I find a lot of women, working moms, come to me. This can be some that have come much later in their career, in their life, some who have come, with young kids, but it's really, I think, this commonality, this desire to say, like, you know what, it's time. Like, I know how to accomplish things. I know how to get things done. What I feel like I need support around is figuring out, how can I enjoy it? Right? Yeah. How can I actually let myself receive from a life that I have poured into?
Yeah. And, would you say that with this sort of framework, you're noticing that, people are coming to you because they're missing this sort of service or this practice in the general holistic health field? Like, how does your practice separate from the rest and traditional methods of stress management?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's probably a combination of factors is what I'm seeing. And it's one that it's the over information of, like, where do I start? I've had clients that really get lost in the weeds of, oh my gosh, I read this article that said if I chop my garlic and let it sit out for 30 minutes before it has, more beneficial health properties. Really getting stuck sometimes when that is not, for that specific client, that's not where she was, right? She was still struggling just to cook meals at home. And so starting, like, offering women, I'll say women because they tend to be the majority of my clients. I speak to, groups of any gender, but for my client base, primarily women. And really offering them a place where they can come even if they don't know exactly what it is that they want. I think that's the other thing. A lot of people offer services and provide guidance when you know exactly what you want. I want to lose 10 pounds. I want this to happen in my life.
Right.
My work really supports you around this idea of, like, I know I want change, even if I can't pinpoint it, even if it's something, an intangible, like my happiness, peace, that type of thing. The habits really support the exploration and the development, and really the almost instantaneous transformation that you start to feel just from that one decision. I had a client just last week that shared, like, a win for her was, like, she had the meltdown. She, it kind of exploded at her husband. But then afterwards, she realized, she was like, oh my God, I realized I wasn't even mad at him. What I was upset about was that I'd kind of just wasted the 30 minutes of free time that I had before we were supposed to go do this thing. And I was frustrated with myself. And even though she didn't make, a different choice in that moment, what she realized was still really empowering for her to start to make the connection between her choices and how she was feeling.
Yeah. And so, yeah, you, with your psychology background, you really do that personalized assessment, really digging into what the issue might be. And then they're able to sort of pull the threads out and find out what the issue is with their behaviors. Yeah, definitely. Really interesting. I think that it's such an intricate sort of area where, you're behaving a certain way. And, it's so true when you said that, with other practices, maybe you have that goal, you need to lose 10 pounds and it's very, like, scientific, or maybe not scientific, but it's, very tangible in the way that you can just go, yep. But, understanding how we think and how we respond to things and how that's impacting us on a stress level, definitely super complicated. But it's nice to see you tackle this for clients. And we often talk about technological advancements in the holistic health field. Do you have any go-tos for positive implementation of technology? And what are also some things that you think might be overhyped when we should and we should perhaps be cautious of? You know, I think a lot of about a lot of the things that are require looking at a screen, or if we need to be watching something educational, that's, you know, very much new age. It's about being remote, being online, but at the same time, for me personally, that also puts a bit of stress on me, because it's like, you know, constant stimulation, you know, also just looking at a phone, looking at if you're on an app, that can also be quite stressful. So interested to know your take on positive implementation of technology, what we can really adopt, and then some things we should be wary of.
Yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head. I'm with you there on it is such a nuanced thing. And again, it's something like, you know, this is why I say my work is really the mix of both science, of understanding that there's information that we can utilize, but also it's not necessarily helpful without the intuitive piece of understanding, how am I feeling with this? There are absolutely, I mean, you know, some of the technology that I use are meditation apps and things like that. They can be really supportive. You know, some people I know really like journaling apps and things like, you know, it's just a way of organizing your thoughts and your feelings. But I do caution the use around them, because sometimes it's so black and white, a lot of them, right? Click the button. How do you feel? Is it, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5? I think unwittingly, sometimes it creates a sense of judgment as we're doing it, because like, oh, it's a 1, but I really want it to be a 4 today. And
right.
You know, the way that we reflect on it is something that we do want to be careful around. And I'm also agree with you a big part of my work is that you need to stay in touch with yourself. It's something that, again, your body, your mind, your thoughts, everything is always offering you information. And while an app can be helpful, I think, again, depending on where you are in your kind of health journey, oftentimes it's over information, like the Aura rings. Oh, am I sleeping well? Oh, look at this. Absolutely. If you're someone who is like committed and dedicated and really far into your holistic health journey, that information, that data can be really supportive of seeing like, oh, I saw that glass of wine I had last night, you know, really messed with my sleep. But if you are in a phase where you're kind of just entering, you don't want to overwhelm yourself with more to-dos, because I think really the habits, again, they work because you're not adding additional things. You're really looking at what you're doing and starting to transform these habits. And all 5 of those habits are things that you have access to, and you are using them in your life in some way, shape, or form. And the more you access them, right, that is how they start to just become your default and your habit.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, just talking about nutritional elements, what are some sort of things that you advise your clients in terms of things that they can be doing to bring down those stress levels, like easy sort of things to do?
Yeah, I think, you know, again, it's eating, it's moving, and it's sleeping. They're like the most foundational pieces. And really, when you consider these, instead of, I think the biggest kind of mistake I see my clients make is trying to go from like 0 to 60 again. Like if you're not already maybe eating healthy or cooking at home, ordering, you know, even if you're doing meal prep and other stuff like from a company and you're trying to make it simple, if you haven't carved the time out to do this type of work, right, you're getting a little ahead of yourself. And when we don't see progress with ourselves, it really deflates us and it becomes really hard. This is why the consistency piece is really linked to choosing just that first stretch goal for yourself. So with sleeping, if you don't even get to bed at the same time each night, your first goal might just be set a bedtime. Like even if it's like 11 o'clock, right, and you want to go to bed, your goal is 10, set it at 11, start getting to bed at the same time every night, right? And then can you move it up to 10:45, right? See what's possible, because as you start to create those new boundaries for yourself to carve that time out for your wellness, you'll also see what you're doing that blocks it. Oh God, I wanted to watch another episode of Netflix, or I wanted to get one more thing done on my to-do list.
Yeah.
Right? But really starting to create these bookends for ourselves to again, kind of carve out the time is how we realize, what we're doing. That's kind of where we're getting in our own way.
Yeah. And, when it comes to where we talk about gut health is, linking the microbiome to that, like a big part of how we deal with stress, how we're processing stress.
The gut bacteria absolutely, create so much of what we're experiencing, what feels like we're experiencing in our mind, the serotonin and the dopamine. And, just the rest of our metabolic function even, right, really resides heavily with the health of our gut bacteria. And again, how you eat is important, but also just looking at your life again with the consistent, how am I feeling? It's just really connecting that idea that stress shows up sometimes in ways that we don't perceive it as stress, right? Whether it's worry, it can even be excitement, right? But things that start to throw us kind of off balance, it can be anger, frustration, sadness. All of these things are stressors for us. And when we experience them for long enough, right, this is that chronic stress that starts to really affect our health. Like, to have something happen as a one-off is totally fine. It's normal. We're built for that kind of thing. It's the chronic stress, right, that starts to degrade us, in a very slow but downward slope that we often just don't pay attention to until we get a bigger wake-up call, like a diagnosis or, something really scary happening in our lives.
Yeah. And what are some things that you see, like, common in your clients where they might not realize it? They might think that they're doing everything possible to reduce stress levels, but it actually might be the reverse. Like, for example, maybe going too crazy on a workout or eating something that is just overdoing it and, putting stress on the gut. Do you see some common trends there?
Yeah, I would say it usually kind of skews the other way versus kind of like over health.
Okay.
Most of my clients are coming to me to a place where they're wanting to create a routine for themselves and they have not necessarily been able to. Again, the stress component there lies in the judgment of what they're doing as part of it, right? Like, oh, I wanted to do this thing and I didn't do it. I was supposed to check in with how I felt and I didn't have a chance all day. But it's really the consistent stress of, they wouldn't say it this way, but what it is really like that feeling of a lack of control. Oh, my workday just ran so long and then I had to run to pick up the kids, right? And understanding that stress is really, it stems from the meaning that we're creating, right? From the things that we're telling ourselves, oh, if I don't do all of this work that comes my way, or if I were to stop work at 5 o'clock instead of 6 o'clock or instead of 5:30, right? Whatever it is, that boundary we're creating. If I do this, then my boss is going to think that I'm not working hard enough, or someone else, my colleagues are going to say, oh, I'm lazy, I'm not pulling my weight. Mm-hmm. I see this especially with women really feeling, like I said, most of mine, they wear so many hats, including mother and primary caregiver for maybe a parent, children, a household, on top of what they're doing outside of the house.
Yeah.
And just realizing that, someone is always going to claim our time. And part of that control, part of that stress reduction is really hearing what we're telling ourselves of what's motivating our decisions of, okay, why do I feel like I have to, like I can't say, put a hard stop to my work day? Why do I feel like I have to say yes to every ask that somebody, claims for my time? And assessing that the thoughts that we're telling ourselves, that story about who I am, create a lot of the stress. And as we start to explore those, again, always reconnecting, oh, Surani asked me to do this favor for her, but if I say no, she's probably going to be mad at me and then this is going to happen. But really, as soon as I feel that disconnect of like, oh, I don't feel good, I need time to, get home and make dinner, right? And connecting these things with realizing that I have so much more control over my life. And it's not always comfortable as we start to make this transition, but there are ways to do it, again, in these kind of bite-sized ways where, it's not like, okay, I've been working till 11 o'clock, working 60-hour work weeks, and now I'm going to work a 40-hour work week, right? Mm-hmm. Those things aren't practical. So learning how to really walk our way step by step into the life that we want, and realize that choice really does reside within us.
Yeah. And you've been in this field for a while. How do you see the field of stress management evolving in the years to come based on, what you've experienced so far?
Yeah, lately I've had a couple of really interesting conversations around this and really trying to kind of bridge two worlds. I think now we're seeing a new workforce where there is a younger generation that really values the idea of the experience and their feelings. And they're still working with a whole nother, several generations of people who have grown up and really lived with this work ethic of it doesn't matter how I feel, we'll just get the job done. So I do think it's a really interesting conversation of allowing each group to kind of learn from the other. I think both have something to contribute to this conversation around productivity, around, just quality of life. And how do we respect and honor how we feel and our own health, our happiness, our emotional health and well-being, our physical health and well-being, along with the fact that we still need to get things done.
Yeah. Okay. And, we have some holistic health professionals who will be listening. What advice could you give them to stay ahead of the curve and incorporate these changing landscapes and upcoming innovations into their practice?
Yeah, I think it's what I see even in my colleagues and my own work, right, that I think proves really successful for our clients is that idea of, whatever your approach is, whatever your belief is, whatever value you're adding to your client's life is to really value that individuality component of it. Because I can think that, this is the best way of eating, this is the best way of working out. But the truth is that each of us are such unique individuals, whether it's our gut microbiome, whether it's our brains, our bodies, what lights us up. Like eating broccoli can be good for me, but if I absolutely hate it and you telling me that that's what I need to do, it's a cost benefit evaluation that I think we cannot undervalue.
Yeah, definitely. I think, when you're consuming all this information on health and well-being and do this, do that, it can be very overwhelming. And sometimes, you just need joy in your life. And maybe one time you do need that dopamine hit that is a chocolate full of sugar,
Yes.
And I've sort of realized that, to prioritize life, all the education that you get and, it's continued learning, but we only have one life and it's very short. So we also need to have joy.
Yeah. And you know what? The funny thing is, the wild thing is what I've realized is that when you lead with joy as that compass, I think for a lot of us, I'll say this personal experience, like I think there was a part of me that feared if I just let myself feel good, that I was going to somehow just, go crazy and go haywire and never do any of the things or never want to do any of the things that I needed to do or maybe I wanted to do. But the truth is that when we lead from a place that feels good, we are just automatically making the better decisions we want to make, right? We're more likely to sleep. We're more likely to eat well. We're more likely to be, treat the people we love good. We're more likely to show up for our colleagues and all the things we try so hard to have the energy for and the stamina for, they just come naturally when we feel good.
Yeah, definitely. And so moving on to some practical advice and best practices that you can share with some of our listeners, some of whom might be tuning in with, not a lot of knowledge on the space and are struggling with high stress levels. What are some immediate steps that they can take to begin fostering low stress habits and balance their personal and professional well-being that obviously, your specialty, not overwhelming them?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the first thing is recognizing that you're in a stress state, ideally way before it becomes really symptomatic. Many you may already be there, but if you're not, again, that daily check-in, that hourly check-in, I say do it as often as possible. It's become such a habit for me that I can automatically, within a few minutes, I can tell if I getting tensed up or I have a conversation with my kids and I'm getting really frustrated, or I can feel my shoulders raising. And that just came from the repetition of checking in. So you got to, number one is just know where you are at any given moment. And number two is if right? Our brains, we have access to different parts of our brain when we are stressed versus when we are in a safer kind of emotional space. And there is something, if you can't work from the head down, right, to change the thought, you can actually help to kind of pacify and soothe your nervous system, which will send the physiological symptoms right through your body when you couple things like taking a really deep breath, multiple deep breaths, right? Massages that vagus nerve. It stimulates our parasympathetic nervous system. You can, flagpole breathing, that in for 4, hold for 7, out for 8.
Okay.
Things like this that start to, again, it's a sense of control, like you're reclaiming control over your nervous system essentially, and that is going to change the way that your stress response is, either turning on or now it's starting to wind down and turn off. Okay. And so you checked in, you saw how you were feeling. Now I'm going to do something about it. And that can be, going outside, taking a walk, moving your body, something to just change the scenery, right? Maybe just saying, wait a second, do I have to believe that thought I just had, right? These 4 simple things can really just shift you into something else. And as soon as you hit pause, your brain is already in a different place and you're going to have a little bit more clarity on, oh, I probably don't want to yell at that person, or here's what I'd rather say to my coworker that may be more productive. Here's what, maybe I don't need that slice of chocolate cake because I'm actually feeling better. Let me have a glass of water first and then see what I'm going to have. So understanding that stress it's emotional, but it's also physiological. So there are kind of these barriers, these breaks that we can hit on purpose, but we can only do that when we know how we feel.
Right. Definitely some very good tips there, especially the breathing one. So I'm going to look into that because I actually do feel like some breathing techniques that I've seen recommended, it's amazing how much breathing helps because, it helps our body to function. And sometimes I find myself just not breathing. I'm just like holding my breath. Yeah. And just like, oh my gosh, why am I doing that? Is it my own stress within that's just I'm in a stress mode? Or I haven't really worked it out. But sometimes even when I'm working out, I forget to breathe. And then it makes such a difference when you're conscious about it.
Exactly. And that's what it is. It's like we're always making choices, whether we realize it or not. So the slowing down, that pace of just, again, asking how am I feeling is really just the pause so that we can make an intentional choice instead of a reactionary choice.
Yeah. Okay, great. And then finally, I'm curious to know how you adopt these principles in your very busy daily schedule. I'm sure your life is not without stress and you have to manage that. How do you maintain stress levels, focusing on your gut health background and positive psychology principles? Like, what would the day in the life of Nithya be like?
Yeah, this is a great week to ask me that question, Surani. I've had, we did this podcast. I had some field trips with my kids for school. I'm teaching my group coaching class tomorrow, and I'm doing a corporate wellness day on Friday. So it has been, and editing my book along the way, which is coming out this fall. It's a busy week, and again, for me to get it out of my head is the first thing. So it's number one is to create prioritization in my list, right? This was happening today, something else happens tomorrow, something else happens Friday. And alongside those things that are tasks that need to get done for the productivity piece of my day, I actually almost double down and invest. Like there's no budging around my emotional well-being in these kind of weeks for me. I get up earlier if I have to, but I meditate. I make sure I'm getting to bed on time. I really hold strongly to the barriers around what supports my well-being. And this is a routine I've created for myself, like, morning meditation, yoga, and even doing X amount of work, which again, I plan the night before. So when I wake up in the morning, I'm not spending energy thinking or, letting overwhelm, have an opportunity to enter the door. I have a list that I start the day with, and this is what I'm doing. But it always starts with doing something to take care of my stress levels as a proactive choice versus, a kind of after the fact choice of like, oh my gosh, at the end of the day, now I'm super set. Like if we've gotten to that point, the ideal is to really start to feed ourselves and fuel ourselves in a way that we know what to expect in our day, and we have enough to give because we're pouring back into ourselves as well.
Great insight there, and great advice to take on board. Lots of food for thought there. Well, Nithya, we've come to the end of the episode. Thank you so much for joining us today. Your insights into managing stress, with the gut health piece and positive psychology to foster low stress habits have been incredibly valuable, and I'll definitely take some of that with me into my life moving forward. So for our listeners who want to learn more about Nithya's approach and services, be sure to visit her website at Nithya Karia Wellness. And if you enjoyed this episode, please follow or subscribe to the Holistic Health Habits podcast for more insightful conversations and practical advice on maintaining a balanced lifestyle. Until next time, I'm Surani Fernando. Take care and stay healthy.